right. Well, hey, thanks everybody for taking a few minutes here to join Will and I. Uh, Rocket PD has been doing a lot of work in teacher evaluation over the last couple of years. I think we've now put something like 4,000 or 3,000 educators through our teacher evaluation cohort that we do with Kim Marshall. And I know some of you know Kim, and you'll hear a little bit about him later. But as we've been doing that, we've been hearing a lot from educators, and they've been saying things like, "Gosh, you know." teacher evaluation is just just this terrible thing that we have to do every year. It's so compliance based. Everyone's rolling their eyes about it. It takes so much time, and we barely have enough time to get through the paperwork, let alone sit in classrooms and really help teachers focus on coaching. And as we've been learning about Kim Marshall's process for more evaluations and shorter or more meetings and coaching in a shorter amount of time, what we've realized is that not only do we have to save teachers time and principals time, but we also have to provide more time for better coaching and for stronger relationships and for that relationship to build over time so the teachers can build confidence and get better at what they do. And we've been talking about this for a couple years, and we just happened to run into Will and Matt and be introduced to them and the work that they're doing with SwiftScore, how AI can help kind of shorten the amount of time it takes to do some of the evaluations and take some really contextual information and feedback to provide for perhaps better coaching and stronger relationships in the schools. And so Will's going to talk a little bit about what they're up to today. He's going to ask you a couple of questions because I think this really is a fact-finding exercise for us, and I'm just really excited for you all to see what the team has been up to. Will, I'll give it away to you.
Thanks, Corey. I appreciate it. I'm going to keep this really quick because I know everyone in this room thinks quickly. You can stop me at any point. It is good to see familiar faces, Steve, John, Susan. Uh, nice to meet new ones, Zach, Paul, Justin. Um, we call y'all the the heavy hitters of education, the thought leaders, the people who know people. I think, the next one of these I hope we can do in person and y'all can actually get a chance to meet each other. But for the meantime, um, I'd love y'all to just introduce yourselves really, really quick, who you are, what you do, what you've done, and where you're calling in from. I'll go in order of who's on my screen. Steve, you're first.
All right. I'm in cloudy Iowa City, Iowa. I Sorry, what else was I supposed to tell everybody?
Just what you've done and what you do.
What I've done. All right. So I spent over 30 years in public ed. My last 18 as a superintendent of schools, failed retirement, was on faculty at the University of Iowa for 3 years. Just retired from that in August. I'm probably busier than I was when I was doing both of those things now, running my consultancy. So doing some fun stuff right now. My most fun thing I'm doing right now is I'm trying to help a school district that needs to close 3 elementary schools and ran a miserable process last year that pitted every faction of the community against each other. So apparently I'm supposed to wear a Superman cape and heal all wounds. So we'll see how that goes tomorrow night.
I love how you describe that as fun. Uh,
It's
it's good.
superintendent fun. And the fun
Got it.
part, Will, just so you understand, it's not my board, it's not
Mm,
my district, they're not my peeps. So
understood. Understood.
the way of doing it.
Touche. Touche. What's good to see you, Steve. John, you're up.
Yeah, so I'm coming to you from right outside of Dallas today, and my my background is I'm on a local school board for a very tiny district in southeast Colorado. I serve as executive director of an organization called Ogallala Commons that is a education and leadership nonprofit that spans parts of 8 states right in the middle of the country, dealing with rural community development. And I spent some time on the board for the Colorado Association of School Boards. Got the privilege of leading it for about what seemed like 100 years in 2020, through all of that fun. And yeah, excited to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Sweet. Thanks, John. We had a chance to meet just last week and had a pretty fruitful, engaging discussion about AI. So hope to continue that here. Thanks, John. Susan, you are up.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'm Susan Enfield. I'm a former superintendent, Seattle Highline and Washoe County, and I'm currently the executive director for the Center for Educational Leadership at the University of Washington. And I'm very intrigued by this because many years ago, CEL, as we call the Center for Educational Leadership, developed what we call the 5D framework that some districts did use and continue to use as evaluation for teachers. As evaluation became a bit of a dirty word, however, over the last several years, we've sort of backed away from that. But I am very intrigued by what SwiftScore is doing and what the power of AI can do to shift people's thinking around making evaluation not just meaningful but manageable, and sort of shifting those mindsets. So happy to be here. And I apologize, I'm going to have to log off a little bit early, but happy to continue to be part of the conversation.
No worries. No worries. Thanks, Susan. Excited to see you tomorrow. Zach, pleasure to meet you.
Hey there. Well, nice to meet you as well. Thanks for having me here. My name is Zach Taylor. I am the executive director of the Center for Transforming Education out of Santa Fe. And I was a teacher for many years, public school teacher and administrator, helped start a school here in Santa Fe. And now I do, consulting, training, facilitation for transformational processes for schools and districts. I work a lot with superintendents and principals. And yeah, I'm excited to see this. I agree with, a lot of what Corey said there at the beginning around, making more time for coaching. And those conversations seems to be an important and key path towards really lifting up the way principals can work with teachers in a better way. Excited to hear about this.
Thanks, Zach. I really appreciate it. Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul Gosman. I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska. Just finished my career as a superintendent of schools by retiring out of Lincoln, Nebraska. Served in 3 states as a superintendent: South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska. And prior to that, I was a school administrator, and prior to that, I was a band director. So in my retirement, in order to continue working, failing retirement, and having fun all at the same time, I'm a consultant in the area of leadership, of course, but also in the music and arts, and I own and operate a music school here in Lincoln called Bach to Rock. And so doing a whole lot of different things, kind of getting back to my drumming roots. So happy to be with you today and believe this is one of the most important topics we can have.
Paul, it's nice to meet you. I was a viola kid throughout my life, so we should catch up at some point.
Rock on. I got a group for you, man. I do.
I'm there. I'm there. Justin, you're our last one here.
Hey everyone, my name's Justin. I'm sorry I jumped on late in the sense that Jesse invited me a couple days ago, so I'm happy to be here, excited to be here. My background is I grew up in Michigan, moved to Virginia for a public teaching job in the middle school. Ended up leaving teaching after I got my master's in admin. So I've been in the ed tech industry now for approximately 10 years. And I've also been on our school board here in Virginia. It is the second largest in the Commonwealth, so right under Fairfax County, we're Prince William County. So been on there a long time, seen a lot of different things, went through COVID. So a lot of different experiences. I would say the fun thing going on right now is in my life is we're in the process of having a war and censuring a member on our board, all that good stuff. It's made the paper and it's turned political, of course. So yeah, that's been what's consuming my life lately.
Good to see
Yes.
you, Justin.
I guess.
Seems like you have the same sense of fun that Steve does.
Absolutely.
I love it. Cool. Well, look, it's amazing to have you all here again. I want to do this in person and hang out, but let's jump to it. I'll keep it quick. As Corey mentioned, we're going to share a little bit about the work that we've been doing for the past year and a half, what we learned from the market and educators across the country. Love to learn from y'all. Share your thoughts, stop me. We'll break for discussion, brief. And then there's an opportunity here to engage you in this discussion here, and we'll discuss that briefly. So Corey said it right. There's definitely something wrong with our evaluation systems. Every single time I'm on a call, which is about 10 times a day now, and you say the word evaluation, you get this, you get pain and frustration, or like, I just don't even talk to me about that. This is at the teacher level, this is at the principal level, this is at the superintendent level. None of this is new to you, I'm sure. The craziest part to me about that is that our best people, principals, superintendents, instructional leaders, are spending so much time doing this system that everyone is disappointed with. And so you have this quote here from Kim Marshall: almost any teacher can pull off 2 strong lessons a year for an observation. It doesn't tell us much. We're doing this, as he would call it, dog and pony show. And our belief is there's an opportunity with the paradigm shift of AI to really reclaim what it means to do evaluation and disrupt this system. As I mentioned, not only are these systems not working, they're incredibly exhausting, right? Box checking exercises feel mundane, but they are draining. This is Jerry Boyd here, and he's super excited about the potential of AI, and within just 2 calls signed up his district to be part of SwiftScore, part of the research cohort we're doing with Corey, Jesse, RocketPD, and looking for a change.
Yeah, I was in a meeting. Actually, it wasn't even a meeting. It was a lunch or dinner at my daughter's school a week ago. That's Alexandria City. I was talking to the principal of Stratford Landing High School, or high school and middle school. It's a special school in Alexandria, and the principal told me, you know, the evaluations that we are doing are just taking so much of our time. We have to start the process almost as soon as school starts, and we're going through that process the entire year, and we still don't even get to a point where we feel like we have our hands around this thing. And it was funny because I'd been doing this work and talking with Will so much to just show up at this event. It wasn't a work event, it was just, you know, drinks and food, and to start to have these conversations with educators, not only in the cohorts that we're running, but, you know, in our own local communities. So it just seems to be a pain point everywhere we go.
And so I'd love to break here before I jump into specifically what we're doing, which I know some of you all are familiar with. Space to share kind of some of your perspectives when it comes to evaluation. Does this jive with how you're thinking about it? And do you think there is an actual potential to change it? Because I think it's fair to say the data and research shows that most of these initiatives don't really work. So I'm going to pick on Susan here. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I'll build on what I opened with. I think that I think Kim's quote that you know, most evaluation is performative at best. It's not substantive. It's not improving practice. And it should be about professional growth and learning. But I think that the process has been so onerous for principals, who, even really talented principals in my experience, who are capable of and wanting to do good evaluations for their teachers. They're just limited by the sheer amount of time that they have and the numbers that they have. And I do think that what the era that we're in now through AI and what SwiftScore is trying to do could be a real game changer. What I wonder, though, is we know that no matter how thoughtful and smart a system or strategy we develop is, there's always going to be some unintended consequence. So I don't know what those might be. And I'm curious to explore that a little bit, but mostly I'm hopeful about what this could mean to really shift people's approach to professional growth and evaluation.
Susan, on that point, I may have shared this to you in our conversation. Our initial work was done in Philly, and we're now a vendor with the Philly School District, which we're stoked about. A lady named Jodanne Floyd said to me, she was like, I'm a 5 out of 5 in instructional practice. Like, I've been doing this. She was a veteran. She could have gone up to the administrator level. She stayed at the building level. She loved it. She was a middle school principal. But she was like, in practice, I'm a 3 out of 5. Like, it's just impossible to do it right. And I think that goes in line with what you were saying. And then based on your second point, I'd like to piggyback off of that and pose that question reframe to the group. When we think about some of these negative externalities that will inevitably come from AI implementation, what do we think they could be? Like, what is our biggest risk here?
Before you jump into that, can I just offer one thing that I think is also really relevant to this? There's a lot of, first of all, there's a huge administrator shortage across the country. We spend a lot of time talking about the teacher shortage, but there's a huge administrator shortage. And one of the things that I'm seeing, especially as I'm doing searches and when I'm working with leadership teams, is something that I'm calling career compression, which is that people are moving through the process at an accelerated rate, which means they're not spending a lot of time in any one area. And whether or not you like Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule, all kinds of research on that. The idea behind it is if you're going to be effective at something, be good at it, you have to do it in order to be good at it. And what I'm seeing out there is a lot of assistant principals who didn't spend much time in the classroom. I've seen a lot of principals that didn't spend much time as an assistant principal. I'm seeing a lot of central office folks who didn't spend much time as a building leader. And if the expectation is that we can turn to these people to fix the problems that Susan was just talking about, I think that's a fool's errand because they don't have the skills or the context to fix the problems that you've described. So if the expectation is that the organization can heal itself, I think we're set up for failure. If the expectation is that you can reach out to your neighbor in a different district or a different building for assistance, I think that is setting us up for failure. So if there isn't some external process, entity, solution that steps into this arena to help address the challenge, it's not going to be able to solve itself with the resources that are currently available. I think that leads into your next question because then that begs the question of, well, who steps in to do this and how do they do it? And if you think about 14,000 districts in the country, and I can't remember what the magic number is, 36,000 schools or something like that, most human intervention to solve the problem that we've just described is not scalable.
I think I heard Kim Marshall mention that the average teacher teaches 900 and some odd lessons per year. Think about that for a second and multiply it by the average number of teachers in a school and think about what you're looking at in terms of a sample size.
There's definitely something here that we hear a lot about. Is AI going to do the same crap faster?
Sure.
I love that term, career compression. That's what it was, right? So when we think about a tool like SwiftScore or a resource like SwiftScore, how do you navigate a landscape like that to support folks that are newer to these roles or don't necessarily have their 10,000 hours? How do you provide that support in a meaningful way?
I might jump in here. I was thinking kind of dovetailing with what Susan was saying, and then the question you asked, Will, before this one too, I think connects to the question you just asked, which is, how are you going to, first of all, what are the unintended consequences, and then how do you support in a way that's really going to feel supportive, right? And my sense with working with teachers for the past 8 years in a variety of different schools, and then being in schools specifically prior to that, is anything that feels you know, like the teacher isn't really being seen. So for example, anything that feels like automated, that where they're being evaluated by somebody who isn't really seeing them is kind of wrought with, you know, I think landmines all through there that are going to have to be navigated. So just mentioning AI and evaluation in the same, you know, sentence, I think is already going to sort of touch on some of that I think is really going to need to be navigated here for this. And I don't know how this works yet. I just, you know, came pretty new here too, so I'm looking forward to it. I certainly see potential. But I think it's going to be, you know, and then how do you then support the folks who have to go in and try to, you know, what we're talking about is some ways of really transforming the process, right? I think it's really, there's going to need to be some human-centered work done where there's humans in the room talking about how this and that, helping teachers feel heard, seen, connected to, and then the tool can be just that, a tool that's helpful between two humans, not in place of humans.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like the hard work is human, right? But what I'm hearing from educators, and even that conversation I just had the other night, is that they can't even get to the hard work, the good work, right? Because
Yeah.
they're so buried on the stuff they have to do to get through the compliant piece of this. And that's a fascinating conversation.
I think that's right. And that's, yeah, when you can talk about it as a tool that's going to help them have more of that human work, I think that's going to be a great way to go forward. Yeah.
It is. It's actually Steve said in one of our earliest conversations, he was like, the time saving of this tool is the Skittles, but like the different kind of work, whether it be the improved instruction or the meaningful, difficult conversations that are going to happen, are the broccoli of this thing. And you gotta give both.
Efficiency without quality is not much.
Right.
So, I mean, there's no question this can make the process more efficient. I think what we want to ensure is that it makes the process like tangibly better, that we're producing better evaluations, better feedback, and better, and improved and can see tangible improvements in teacher practice. So I worry that people will focus so much on the efficiency part of it, the time saving, which is real. Don't get me wrong, that's huge.
Right.
But to your point, like that's the floor, and we want to bring it up to the ceiling.
And maybe to
Yeah.
bridge off of that, what Susan said, I think that it's what do you buy with the efficiency? So if what's most important is the conversation that the leader is having with the teacher, if you can condense the work that happens prior to that conversation and feed them better information that provides actionable conversation with the teacher, back to your first example of the, hey, I'm a 5, but I'm a 3. Well, if I'm a 3 and I know I've got a 5 capacity, I want to be a 5. I want something from the evaluation process that allows me to grow. So if the efficiency, to Susan's point, if what you can sell is the efficiency piece is everything that leads up to the conversation, and now you can increase the value of that conversation, it's gold.
Hmm. It's so interesting. It's the exact delineation that Zach actually made is one I've been thinking a lot about, which is there's tool and then there's process. And those are distinct things. And it's really weird because I guess formerly I've thought of us as a software tech company. We create good educator aligned tooling. Amazing, right? But the more I think about it, the more we need to be involved in process itself, that human component of, so you have the tech and now what? And there are ways that I would, in maybe a little bit or in another discussion, love to kind of bounce ideas off of this group and think through how do you, as you said, Zach, right? Like get the right person in the room when the computer gets turned on. Sweet. So just like everybody was saying here, we're thinking about it very similarly. A couple things I always say when it comes to AI is, and I think we already made this clear, but step one is old problems, new solutions. Like when anybody is creating an AI tooling, like do not create something that doesn't solve a headache people haven't had for decades. Like as I've described to many people in this conversation who I've talked to prior, You know, we were founded after I got coffee with my former English teacher. And he said to me, if I won the lottery, I would still teach, but I would pay somebody to grade. And he said it in a maybe unique way, but like there is no teacher out there who hasn't thought of that in some way, shape, or form. And that's the opportunity I see for AI. Not necessarily like, oh, there's this AI learning assistant. It's like, okay, but for what and for why? And I can tell you, if you can get that teacher with more time with the student, that's something we've always wanted and will be meaningful. And we'll look back in 10, 20 years and be like, that was a good initiative. It's how we landed on evaluation. And again, because this technology is so disruptive, there is that opportunity for a paradigm shift and to own the moment. One of the folks who couldn't make it to this call today, Scott Murray, who has provided some really amazing mentorship and coaching to the SwiftScore team, said, you know, and he says this in some of his Launchpad courses or RocketPD courses, we kind of need to own this moment in AI for education. Like AI tooling is getting built and it's being used, but the big question is like, what are we optimizing for here? Is it revenue? Is it clicks? And a lot of these tools are, but you would love to see a world in which the education industry steps up and thinks about tooling from a student experience and learning perspective, which is probably the hardest because it's abstract. How the tool works before I show it really quick. We'll make it really, really easy to capture any kind of notes, handwritten text. We transcribe them. We allow educators to create a standard aligned evaluation that's a draft, but it takes about 30 seconds, right? So it would have taken maybe 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 30 seconds. And what we say here is like, that is not done. If you take that feedback and you send it to your teacher, like we have failed here. Like all the research shows that does not work. And it's just, you don't need research to know that your teacher on the other end is just gonna be like, okay, so AI just told me some BS, right? The way we think about this is it should be a springboard to conversation. How can I take this, view it as 80% done, make edits, make changes, and then launch into a conversation with the, I forget exactly how you phrase it, but like the efficiency currency, right? And buying time with your educators instead of thinking about like the specific word. One of the things that we built under the hood of our technology, which my brother did, not me, and he does all the technical stuff. And y'all should meet him at some point. He essentially created what's called a custom pipeline. So we're built on top of Gemini. Doesn't really matter the model. Schools tend to be a little bit more comfortable with it, so we go with it. But what's cool is we did this project with the World Bank, and we actually created a pipeline is somewhere between, if you've heard of like prompt engineering, where you talk to AI through text, and agents, where it's like the AI has all this autonomy. So it's like directly instructing the AI, and we achieve higher accuracy ratings. So what we're able to do is, instead of going to a general LLM, which can pull in research data and frameworks, we're able to create what we call like a context-supported, contextually engineered system. We'll take your strategic goals, meeting notes, conversations, specific language, work with the district. They say, oh, we love the Teach Like a Champion framework for learning. Great, we'll load that in. You know, everyone can create a really great evaluation if they have 5 hours, you know, so give us your ideal evaluation and we'll calibrate your system so all of your instructional leaders have that as their baseline. Now, of course, what you receive on the other end still only matters what you do with it, but there's probably a little bit more to do when everybody's synced in lockstep, aligned to the district goals. One of the things I've been thinking about is like, you go to the next slide here, Corey. You know, one of the concerns is accuracy with these models. this is what I would say is probably the least valid concern. I'm always like, concerns are valid and we need to be sensitive about it. But with accuracy, at least what we've been able to find is by pulling together all of these different threads, the old evaluations that were created for the teacher, the specific goals, all of these things, the feedback itself tends to be more accurate, more specific, more usable than the principal who maybe has an Excel sheet with like 3 examples of proficient and then like middle and struggling, right? And they're like copying, pasting. And you see a lot of stuff like that. And again, not as a testament to educator lack of passion, but really just a disillusionment with the system. There's also this concern that we see sometimes, which is like this one I say is super valid. The AI is going to replace me. And that can manifest in 2 ways. One is like literally, like I won't have a job, right? So what's the deal with that? Like obviously I don't like that's the scary world. Or what feels a little bit more close to home is it's going to replace the thinking side of my brain. Like we get this a lot. Like, am I going to be dumber because I'm using this tooling? And it's a super valid concern. I don't know if anybody's seen the MIT paper that's out there that said the people who use ChatGPT are using their brain a little bit less when it came to like writing essays. You know, that's super valid. The question that we have is, again, what do you do? What do you buy with that time? Are you thinking rigorously about other things or not? And so that's where process becomes so important. And then every conversation has at least one touch about the union, unless you're Jerry Boyd and he's in Tennessee where they don't have union. But unless you're in Tennessee, that comes up. Really interesting thing here is that there's a bigger concern with the concern about the union than there is that the union is actually concerned. And so what I mean by that is people are often like, I don't want to show this to my union. But often when we say, hey, let's loop in the union, let's have this discussion, immediately, you know, sometimes teachers have their reservations, very fair. But not once have we had a sit down or a conversation or an email exchange where the union didn't walk away being like, I'm pretty excited and I want to engage in this discussion. In part, that's because they know AI is going to be used anyways, so let's do it thoughtfully. And in part because the bar for evaluation has been set so low that they're like, look, if this can change how it's happening, like, all right, let's give it a shot. And if we can have, we talk about building rooms like this one, right? Or how we create our tech, listening to teachers. I mean, it's our goal that the union ultimately goes to the district and when they're bargaining, they say, we need the SwiftScore thing to be used because it's just, it feels right. It gives me the agency and the support that I need. I'm going to show the tool really briefly. I know we're running a little bit late, so I'm going to move really quick, especially because I know that some of us have already seen.
I might need to stop sharing, Will, so you can share. So I'm going to do that now.
I think I'm okay.
You should be able to.
Can you all see my screen?
I can't see it yet. Let me stop and see what happens.
I'm looking at Steve.
It looks like it's coming up. It says begin
I can
typing
see
on it
Will
and
on
the
your
teacher's
screen.
name. Yeah.
Sweet, that's me. Amazing. So this is SwiftScore. This is the upload page. We do assist with other things in teacher evaluation. We assist with principal evaluation. We're doing work with CASB, the Colorado School Boards Association, for superintendent evaluation. The interesting thing about the system is it just accepts inputs and shoots out outputs. And so it's available for a lot, used by a lot. But for this instance, I'm just going to show it for the principal to teacher relationship. And so we'll roster in teacher names for the principal. You can select your teacher, and then we, like I mentioned, you want to make it as easy as possible to upload any kind of notes, probably more than you were considering before. Our feature favorite is this transcribe feature, which can capture what I'm saying, what teacher's saying, what the user's saying. If I laugh, spaces in conversation. And so when we talk about Kim Marshall, one of his things is unscripted evaluation, right? How can we just click transcribe, not bring your biases and write some conclusions on the fly or scramble the right stuff without looking up, but soak it in and then also still get a transcript. I'm going to pull up this super short sample evaluation. I always use this one, but after this, I'm happy to set you all up on accounts and you can play with the tool yourself. Take a second to read this. This came from actually a classroom in Philly. This is what a teacher wrote. They have S for student, T for teacher. And so what we do with that is we can align to really any standard. I have Susan's 5D cell in here. We have Danielson. We'll do district-specific ones. Hey, I have a walkthrough that's broken down from the Massachusetts teacher evaluation. Cool. We'll just take the PDF and align our software to that. I'm going to put us on Danielson for now, just for simplicity. And I'm going to generate a report here. And so what we're going to do is we create this standard aligned evaluation. Again, it takes about 30 seconds. And it's not the final draft. It should not be the final draft. It's a head start. All of it is completely editable. But what we often find is it's like kind of surprisingly good. Like the feedback's pretty strong, even if that was probably too short of an observation that I showed, right? Like it was 2 minutes. Kim Marshall says the mini observation is 10 minutes, right? So, but still fairly extensive. And again, that guide to a conversation. When we talk about implementation too, a big part of this work is making this not a headache for educators, especially if we're going to ask more in terms of the process. So onboarding takes about 20 minutes. We actually just have people create an evaluation when we're on the call and we're like, hey, that was that. You'll see certain of these components are non-scored because there wasn't enough information to score them. You can edit it. You can change the scores. And you can dive specifically into feedback. And I'll go into 3C, which is one of our instruction components. And so what you're going to see is feedback in our base model, so to speak. When we work with a district, as I mentioned, we calibrate it to their specific frameworks, their specific goals, initiatives, portrait of a graduate. We have old evaluations, all of the above. So it actually might look very, very different. But I hope this will show a decent sense of like how powerful it can be. Here's a performance analysis, like what happened. And I'm going to scroll. It also has a growth plan. Because we have this custom pipeline, we've been able to construct it with really refined guidelines. Concrete evidence is being pulled, quotes. You see this growth path, which you have concrete examples when there are next steps, as opposed to just talking about a concept. And again, like I've never looked at this and seen an educator be like, all right, let me put this in PowerSchool or send this to my teacher because it's perfect. There's always something that's like, yeah, I don't know about that. And that's good. And that's the thinking and engagement that we encourage that is used with this tool. I'm going to transfer to this conversation starter side. So again, this could be very different depending on the district. This actually came from our conversation with Kim. He looked at the performance analysis and he was like, I don't like this. And so then on the fly, I had my brother. I was like, yo, Matt, code this. And so Corey was there and it was like,
I was there for this, guys. I can vouch for they did this in about 15 minutes.
and
Matt probably doesn't want me to tell you that, but he could, yeah.
no, I know. I was like, Matt, you got to code this thing. And so anyways, at the end of the call with Kim, we showed him this version and it was based on specific things that he mentioned. This is a teach like a framework, teach like a champion. It's pulling from teach like a champion. It's one single concrete next step. It's under 1,000 characters. And it's in a pretty friendly colloquial voice. In addition, one of the things that Kim appreciated was this conversation guidance. And so when we talk about facilitating the conversation, it should probably be explicitly said here. And so what we do here is we say, okay, here's, as you go into this conversation, here's some background. Things you should probably think about. sample questions you can ask. Obviously, it can't do the conversation for you, right? Shouldn't do that. But it can give you guidelines and things to look out for, and facilitate the sit down after these.
This was the aha moment. I know I can say this for Kim because he told me as much. And for me too, when I first saw this, after all that, the hours that we had sat on these teacher evaluation panels and everyone was talking about time, but time's not the real power here. I think you get your time back in some ways. It's how can I be more, quote, I guess, dangerous with the time that I have, right? And when you start to get this guidance and you start to get these things that allow you to think about the context with that you're walking into in a classroom and how you use that, that's some powerful stuff.
I'm not going to show it now, just in the interest of time, so we can be respectful of, I'm sure, the million things you all have to do. We also track all of this in the system. So we've seen some pretty nasty Excel sheets that principals have created to like corroborate like, oh, the teacher growth and the student learning outcome, and then this part of the, ISG or whatever it is. And so we'll track all that in the system by teacher, the score, insights over time, and by school if you're the superintendent. We often think about this as sort of creating a direct line from your district strategic initiative to every classroom, every teacher, every student. And that's really what these evaluation systems should be. And I think every person we talk to agrees with that it should be that way, but often it isn't. And so the goal is alignment, working together as a district. I want to break really briefly here. Thoughts about what I've shown so far, kind of in consideration of some of those excitements and concerns that we talked about earlier.
When I think of the things shared by Steve and Zach, Susan, whoever, before we talked, before you started giving details, what was striking me was the need to reframe all conversation around evaluation. So it's not a chore, it's not a task, it's not a burden, but it's about changing achievement. And how does the conversation of evaluation on Monday change instruction on Tuesday, or just that whole thing. And I love what you're doing here as it relates to that. I think it checks the boxes for me, that it allows the educators to reframe the conversation around the purpose of evaluation, and it reprioritizes the purpose of evaluation, which is the most important thing a principal really can do if they do it well in moving student achievement forward. So I celebrate that.
Thank you. I have a specific question here. So when we talk about process, one of the things that I think was an inch closer to process is that conversation starter, right? We're talking about what you do after getting the feedback. I don't think that should be the extent we go for process. One of the things that we're doing, and we're providing folks who are using the tech, we're giving 4 PD sessions. We're going to bring in JC from Digital Promise and my brother, actually, to talk about AI and to talk about education, wisdom and the youth. But I always feel like there could be more. And I'm going back to that question, that thought, Zach, about like, should it really be that like when SwiftScore gets turned on for a district, there's always somebody in the room? And when I say somebody, it could like not me, like somebody who actually like knows how to do this thing right when it comes, and by this thing, I mean instructional development. And because also like as a company, that's a lot. That's not inexpensive. But is that what we should be doing? And I'm curious if anyone has thoughts about that.
I appreciate that. Well, for sure. I mean, so I was like simultaneously excited, especially about the conversation starter piece there, and and then how the Danielson framework popped up right there, and it was all right in line. I mean, that stuff is super helpful. And then to have that be available for whatever the context is for principals, because I think it's, our work within the transformational process, the context is everything, right? Like we're working with me having to meet like schools and teachers where they're at, and each school has its own way, right? And then my one concern that popped in my head, connects to what you just said, which is almost like, man, for a busy principal to get something that slick that they can just like print off and say, here you go, it's pretty darn tempting. Like, hey, here's a great teacher. They're probably doing pretty good. I'm not sure they're doing pretty good, but it seems like they say all the right things in staff meetings. I'm gonna go ahead and just like let AI handle this one, and I'm gonna like, hand this to
Right.
them and call it good. I'm a little worried about that, honestly, when it's like it's got so much information right there so quick, right? And principals are so busy, it's almost an impossible job. And I was even thinking like, man, could you put like a watermark on it until they until they have the coaching session? Something that almost guarantees that they have that coaching session, right, with them. Because really, I
Right.
feel like evaluation is almost the wrong word for some of what we're talking about here. It's really about the coaching, or the two combined is really, a word we use is supervision, and it really helps both of those. It combines both those
Right.
pieces. So that's just, I'm just, thinking out loud here, but
Well, it's really interesting. We have a feature that is on our roadmap that we're working towards, and we're playing around with designs for. And then I would love to show you too when it's in a place to share. That essentially we're building out our teacher side. What happens when the teacher receives the evaluation, the space for them to grow. We've talked about tapping into, thanks, Susan. Thank you for coming. I'll see you tomorrow. Talking about how to align like PD videos to your specific needs as a teacher, right? And stuff like that. One of those things that we've been thinking about is a conversation tracker. Hey, like have the conversation. You can transcribe it using our transcribe feature. You can get feedback as a principal about how you did the conversation. The teacher can get next steps, and that goes in the system. So then when we talk about things like the Marshall framework, which has 10 mini observations per teacher per year, like you can actually track that, and maybe I don't know if it's mandated by the district, if it's more of a gold star type system, if it's something in between. But it's interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Corey, you said it as you kind of brought it together. All the way through, I think that there is a temptation that you would look at this as a time saver, but really what you're talking about is leveraging your time differently. So it's not that you would stop doing these activities from the start of school to the end of school. It doesn't really buy you any more time in your day. It just is allowing you to use a tool that allows you to get to the next step instead of having, you know, the first conversation for the 10th time. Maybe someday you can get to the 10th conversation for the first time. And, that's, I think, what is challenging to do. And so it's like, it's not time saving. It is, it's actually getting something out of the system. Like you said it to me the first time we met. It's not, is it doing the same crappy thing faster? And it's like, well, it's not even just that. It is that, um, and Zach, to some of what you were saying there, it's like, and I think Paul, you were mentioning the reframing of whether, evaluation, it comes with its own context, right, and its own sort of connotation, but we're not, at that point you're talking about compliance, but not really accountability, and accountability to goals, or accountability to as an entire system. And some of what Zach was saying was like, okay, well, where's the accountability then for the administrator that we're moving forward in this, and that we're not doing, because you don't want just the same crap faster, you want less crappy too. but you don't want to stop there, right? Like you could use this tool to get a less crappy version of the same thing faster, but that's not the goal. It's yeah, I mean, I think all of that comes together. I don't know how you necessarily ensure that in the process, but I also think most people are doing this for the right reasons. And what they find out is that the lowest version of compliance requires the greatest amount of their time. And so if they could invest that same time and get to a better place, they'd probably desire to do that. So I don't know, that doesn't really help you when you talk about that career compression, right? Like that sort of, although it does allow you to spend the time that that professional is going to spend developing, at least spending it in the right place, developing the right thing, instead of spending all of that time, they got to get to 10,000 hours somehow. So the first 1,000 might as well be useful.
And also, John, it's like, if we are dealing with this career compression, it's how can we facilitate the 10,000 hours?
And Will, to John's point, I think he hit on something that's really important, right? It's not necessarily the saving of time, it's the reallocation of the effort within the time you have available. So if you want to do the Kim Marshall 10 micro observations, and you asked most administrators, the amount of time that's required to do 10 mini observations is not the same amount of time required to do 2 max observations.
Right.
It's far more, because it's all that administrivia in the background, right? That's required to do that. It's the taking of the notes, it's the transcribing of the notes, it's the evaluating of the notes, it's the coming up with the observation conclusions. And if that's the part that you can make more efficient, now I can find the time to have 10 micro conversations with the teacher that'll be as much time as it would have taken me to do those 2 macro observations, which is far more effective if I can spread those out over 9 months rather than trying to do 2 of them in April and May, which
Right.
provides zero benefit for the teacher because they're about to head into summer break. So it's a time shifting thing. So I think that observation that John just had is, I mean, that is right in the bullseye. It's how do you take the same amount of time, reallocate that effort, and come up with a far more productive use of that, especially for John, like you mentioned, for that early career administrator. If I know what to talk to that teacher about, I'm going to be far more likely to have that conversation.
Mm.
If I don't know what to talk to them about, I don't even want to talk to them. I just want to get it done and punch my ticket. So
Right.
I think that you have the much more opportunity to build confidence in that young administrator over time if they can have those shorter conversations based on solid content than just meeting you once in March and once in April and saying I'm done.
I think it was Kim who told me, the real enemy here is mediocre practices in classrooms, and those are very difficult to suss out if you're only walking in once or twice a year. You pretty much have a good sense for, who's not up to par, who's, drastically underperforming, and you can start removal process if that's required for those educators. You know who your high flyers are for the most part, but those mediocre practices that are taking place, how do you suss those out? And then how do you spend time with those educators that is valuable so that you can move the needle beyond that, mediocre practice to truly exceptional practice? I think that's a really interesting idea, this notion that, finding and sussing out those mediocre practices is a real challenge in schools. And certainly we have a lot of that.
I want to be respectful of our time here. Just move on briefly, but there's a lot here, and I might be following up on some of these threads over email. I mentioned the last thing here, which is engage, right? So there is The reason we invited y'all to this room, and for the folks that I've met, I've been really taken to the thoughts that you've shared, and for the folks that I haven't, I know Jesse and Corey think incredibly highly of you. As we put on this research cohort, and just to be really, really clear what that is, in the course of the year, we're bringing together 100 different districts to take part in this conversation. People have raised their hands and taken part really quickly, surprisingly fast for how districts tend to move in terms of speed. And essentially what it is, it's, hey, use our tech, use it for maybe all of your schools, maybe it's a handful of them. And we're going to give you, as I mentioned, this 4 PD sessions. And also, we'll engage you in a research study with the University of Pennsylvania. And we're going to look at 3 different metrics. The first is principal performance and efficiency. The second is relational trust. We're being brought close together, further apart because of AI. And then the last is teacher growth. Are we actually achieving goals and growing, or is everyone proficient and students are learning less, like we've seen in the data show? So as we're putting this together, one of the things we think a lot about is community, discussion, engagement, that whole idea of owning the moment in AI. And what we're putting together is this group of people called Frontier Partners. And we'd like to offer this opportunity to y'all who are here. It's the space to lead the conversation with your own communities and networks. Own the moment, not necessarily endorse this tool. Endorse the conversation, and create a coalition of people who are ready to discuss. And I hope what you found here is that it is a core value of SwiftScore and our product development to listen to educators and build with that in mind, and with the North Star being student learning outcome. And as I mentioned, we've been around for 1.5 years, and the way to be around for 20, 30, 40 years and do this right is to listen and learn and do this pairing of, I know what the heck education is all about, and we know how to build tech, right? And so we can follow up about specifics about what that exactly looks like. I will share briefly, this is not you as a door opener for SwiftScore. It's also not you as a full-time job either, right? We will assist in a lot of the process of corralling people or whatever it is, at your guidance and direction. So here we have this QR code. I invite all of you, please scan it and fill out just a brief survey. Even if you're not interested in being a Frontier partner, one of the questions is, do you want to be a Frontier partner? Is that interesting? Just say no, so that we know, and that's totally fine. But please fill it out. And if this is something of interest, we'll be in touch and kind of talk about how we can work with you to do this conversation the right way. In part, that's a group like this bringing together thought leaders, and in part, it's bringing together larger groups of people on digital or potentially in-person forums. I know we're 2 minutes over. I want to seriously thank everyone for being here today. I know y'all are some of the busiest people that we know, so it really does mean quite a lot. And I think I'm taking away a lot from this, and I hope there's something that y'all are too. We'll be in touch. I definitely will send a follow-up email to this group with some of my musings as we think about some of the threads that we talked about here and ways we can push our tool forward. And if you have additional thoughts or want to continue the conversation, please hit me up.
Thanks everybody for being here. We really appreciate it. I think there's a real tendency in ed tech to build a tool and try to find a use for it. Engineers looking to find a use for it. I think what we've found in building RocketPD is that it is so much more interesting to build community, to understand that community's needs, and then to deliver solutions based on what that community is telling you. And I really feel like that is what Will and the team are trying to do with this cohort and this group, is understand what those challenges are, be honest about them, and try to find solutions for them. So I hope you'll take a look at it. We really appreciate your time today, and we hope you'll share some of what you've heard today with some of your friends and colleagues as you continue the conversation outside of this safe space. So thank you very much.